Greetings. Welcome to part 3. I know a lot of people have been wanting to hear this one. I've been really reluctant to make it. Um, it still bothers me quite a bit, sadly, right? And some parts of it may be a bit graphic for some. I give you that warning right now. I'm toning it down big time and very, very dramatically underscoring it. Because if I threw in all the details and all that, I don't think too many of you would be able to sleep at night. My father passed in 2002 and all that, and a friend of mine that I was talking with and online and that I'd introduced her to my family online and so forth came up for my dad's funeral when I just put the message I had on I had a Yahoo Messenger then before they messed it up, I don't use it now. She saw that my dad died, so she came all the way up even though she wasn't feeling well. That was Janie, my second wife, right? The past month ago today. And she went back down there, I wish that she got to meet my dad at the end there, right? We're starting to build a relationship. I didn't have what many of you take for granted, a good family life, right? Most of the time that I recall, my body was covered in stripes. Now that I reflect on it, my youth a lot, I did some mistakes. Some things I deserved, some things I didn't. That's life, right? I know I'm not alone and others have experienced it too, right? It's our past, the things that we live through that make us who we are today, right? And those experiences can help us teach others what to avoid. There's some good can come out of it. Anyway, I went down to the States, because I had her talking to my family and all that online before I even went to meet her in person. A good friend introduced us, right? Said, I know this person would be great, just perfect for you, right? And Janie had a really good heart. So I went down there. This year down in the States for a bit, right? No fooling around, none of that stuff. Even though I wasn't fully a guy yet, I was trying to do right and all that stuff, right? And I'm down there, and even though I met some really nice people in the States, and I think there's lots out there, there's some that aren't so nice, and I had some experiences, and I'm not putting down the country, I'm just telling you some of the things that happened to me, okay, while I was visiting down there. I've seen about, I think, 25 or 26 of the States, and I really would like to see the others sometimes, but the issues down there right now, you couldn't even pay me to live down there. I can't. Right? It's not for me. There's too much of that discrimination, everything else going on. I know it's pretty much a lot of places, but they just won't figure out that we're brothers and sisters. But anyway, see, I'm trying to stall a bit because it's really painful for me. I'm trying to find the right words that don't freak people out is hard sometimes, right? Especially when the emotion is deep and painful still. I have that peace and calm like 24/7 until I come to this one topic, so I've been really avoiding talking about it, right? But I'm down there and I'm eating food like nothing I've ever eaten before in my life, right? I don't know if any of you are familiar, with those little teeny tiny burgers from White Castle, which I happen to like, by the way. She took me to this one place, and I'm not a small man. I'm 5'10", average size hand of man, not no tiny hand. You take your hand and put it in a big fist, right? And they had a hunk of lard that they put down the size of that, right? And they put a teeny tiny burger, but the size of a White Castle on top of that, right? And you're going, what? And then they put the bun, they put more lard, and then they put the bun on there. Right? And she brings me these things, and you just touch the bun, and the grease is oozing down your finger. I've never eaten like that in my life, right? And I've been getting a lot of job offers from Google and Microsoft. I had the phone ringing off the hook. I even had a university call and offer me a job as head of IT, right, and wanted me to redo the whole university. Phone is ringing off the hook, and at that time I lived in Windsor, right? And I talked to my stepmother. Said the phone is ringing off the hook. Can you please take one of these jobs and everything? And I figured, okay, I'd gotten married to Janie while we were down there, right? And there's something happened there. I'll leave that for another one. And so here it is, February 13th, and I'm getting ready. So I know we're going to leave so I can be in Canada for Valentine's Day, right? and that's a special day to me because it was my daughter's birthday, right? And all of a sudden I had this heart attack, right? Really massive heart attack, right? I don't know if it was, from the pills I took and all that when I had these industrial accidents before. I'll leave that in another video, right? This is the hard one for me to deal with right here. So I'm getting it out because you said, the truth will set you free, and put it out there. And a lot of people have been asking me about it. It was just too painful to talk about. Anyway, so she takes me to the hospital about 8 miles away from where she lives in southern Ohio, right? And these people, they take my health cards and stuff, right? And the thing is, I had global ambulance coverage. I had 4 health cards. I had better health coverage than over 90% of Americans, right? Think of it as like Congress level or higher. Right? Anywhere in the planet, they would have brought me back to Canada. I had everything covered, right? And you know how cars got like toll-free numbers? So Canada, US toll-free, and then got the worldwide. These guys couldn't figure out, and this is 2003, that Canada had telephones. We didn't use telegraphs. And I honestly heard them saying, well, how do we talk to their telegraphs? And how wouldn't they, not call. And I was forgotten about in the hallway for 16 and a half hours. Okay. Half an hour of that, though, was in another room. And this is the part that may get a little bit graphic for some. Right? And there's more later, though. Right? It gets worse, sadly. There's some guy coming in there. He's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed bubba. Right? And he never held a scalpel before, clearly a janitor or something. And he tries to do an angiogram. My father had them, so I know they're like a 1/4-inch incision. Well, not even holding a scalpel, right? And he's like a butcher with a meat cleaver. And as proof, I've got several inch scars on each side of my groin because of this man not knowing what he was doing. Getting instructions on a speakerphone from a guy who was clearly from Pakistan, right? And he messed up on the right-hand side, and machine gun and guy yelling, pull it out, pull it out, pull it out. And you can't even imagine the pain, because earlier the guy had been pouring the undiluted stuff they use for disinfecting, you're supposed to dilute with water, straight on my testicles. And it felt like you were holding a big lighter under each one of them, right? And I politely asked him to stop. And he used enough. He laughed and just poured more. I mean, that was earlier. And then he's doing this to me. And then he goes to the other side. And when you do the angiogram, they usually give you a little plug because they don't want you to bleed out. Well, he didn't do that, right? And my pain is horrible. I've been hit by forklifts a few times and things like that, and I've had a lot of broken bones. I'm no stranger to pain, right? And here it is, this pain, like in my left elbow, and that's what men got to watch out for, that left elbow area. And you swear it was like pruning shears had been cutting it, and it must be just a thread left. I mean, you're praying for your own arm to fall off, and if you could, you just rip it off and throw it away to stop that pain. It was horrible. And then you get that chest pain and everything, and here's this man torturing you, right? And I told him it was burning, and he just giggled, right? And I couldn't do anything about it. And then a tear escaped my left eye, right? Because I don't like showing emotion, right? It's from all the days I got beat down and stuff like that. You don't show them nothing, right? And, I started doing left, he did the right side and he'd go on the left. And I said, God, forgive me here, you made me a man, but I might be seeing as a girl. I think this guy's going to cut it off. If you can give me the strength for one last thing, if the guy comes near me, and someone knows you might like this, but I said, if he gets near me, give me the strength to do one last thing and rip his throat out so this man don't ever do this to anyone again, right? And I hope the Lord's got a fine place in hell for that man, right? And I don't know, he was looking at the way I was staring at him, and I don't know if he read my mind or he knew that don't go near this man, right? And he left, and a few minutes later, some orderlies came out and left me in the hallway, right? Well, Janie tells me, because they didn't put it anywhere near the seats and nobody can get her seats. They got some seats bolted in some place you can't move them. So I'm far away. They won't even let my wife have a chair to be near me as they forget about me in this hallway. And she's saying, she could only stay for a little bit. She was having problems standing and things like that. And the thing would flatline, and nobody was doing a damn thing about it. And then they start beating by itself. Now it had gone on like that for the whole time. I was telling you, right? 16 and a half hours of whole experience, right? And her mother came in and goes, you still here, boy? You're going to make a big lawsuit. She said that word. And suddenly, I'm being thrown in a life flight because there are 2 life flight crews that had been there for 14 hours. Just nobody bothered telling them there's anybody that needed it, you know. And I was feeling bad, you know. And it was uh, these guys, you know. I don't know if you've ever been in a helicopter before. You know, they got speakers in the helmets. You can hear these guys, right? And they're talking one thing, and I guess one of the guys forgot. They left it on. I said, "Oh, let's take a little detour because this guy ain't gonna make it anyway." So you know, here I am, like I didn't really talking to God much, you know, in my life, right? Because I ran into a lot of people who claimed to be of Jesus and God and all that, and they were doing horrible things and just the way they lived. Just I said, "That's God. I don't want any part of it." And I think some of you out there can relate to that, right? But they weren't really representing Jesus, sadly, right? So I figured, hey, I talked to God, hey, I may see you soon, you know, can you please like, turn down his pain a little bit, and I'm sorry for anything I did wrong. I guess I'll be seeing you soon. I wish you had a chance to do it over again. I'm sorry. You know, just in case, you know how it is, right? There are no atheists in foxholes, right? And I passed out just before, you know, before their landing, right? Because eventually they figured it was on and turn it off, right? And then it been Columbus, right? And you know, and then I was awake for a second in the hallway to see the lights, you know, if you're going down and you're in a gurney looking up for a second, then out again, passed out. And I wake up in the middle of open heart surgery with my chest cracked open. You want to talk pain? Whoa! Welcome to my universe, right? I am definitely no stranger to pain, but I know I'm not alone, and there are others who've had just as bad or worse, especially Jesus. He really got beat down, right? And these, and I listen to these doctors talk, you know, because you don't want to say anything, especially when the guy's got his hands inside you, right? And they're talking, oh, this guy ain't gonna make it. Let's just make it look good. And the guy had messed up, and he cut the veins too short from my left leg, right? And for some of you that know, they wanted to cut my leg 3 times after that, right? And I wouldn't let him, right? And I still got it now, thank you, Jesus, right? Um, you know, and so he cut some more, and he you know, just figured they're not gonna make it look good. So, and then they're talking about all my organs and what they can get for them and everything, you know, and that's when I said quietly and politely, if you guys are gonna kill me, you know, can you at least give me something for the pain and put me to sleep? And then somebody jabbed me in the left leg with a needle. And I think it hit the bone because that last little bit of pain was more than I could handle, and I passed out. Anyway, I ended up getting a whole day and a half in that hospital, and they kicked me out during a winter weather advisory. The scariest part was that, and it got worse. And I heard these same physicians that had operated on my heart saying the same damn thing in the other hospitals. How do we get a hold of those telegraphs to those cabins and igloos in Canada? You know, find out who's got insurance or not. Oh, well, let's kick him out. And they were having one of those winter weather advisories down there where there's around minus, you know, it was below minus 28 Fahrenheit. I think it was minus 32 or something Fahrenheit. And they lost my shoes, they lost my socks, and all I had was little paper slippers on. I was running a fever of about 105. They wouldn't give any medication or nothing, right? And I stepped out, and there's one of those buses that goes there that takes people to a hotel and said, hey, where are your hotels? Take me there, right? And I had scars on my groin and along my chest. And like for 3 days, I just lay in this bed going, oh, right? And Janie was freaking calling and saying, hey, man, you just got out of there. You need some, you know. And saying nobody had told me that, you know, you're not supposed to move after an operation because the vibrations of a car, I found this out after, can loosen the sutures and you bleed out. So if I tried to run for it to Canada from Columbus, I would have bled out before I even made it to the border. And a doctor told me that I ran into down in the States. This is a Muslim guy. He was really nice. I liked him, right? We chatted a bit, and he admired my medical knowledge and that. And I had wondered if I was one of his students, which was the cool part, right? But, you know, I was hurt a lot, so I like to learn a lot of things, right? And I didn't even know that, though, right? This is interesting. I do know it now, though. And Janie got us a ride, but the ride was south, right? About that 2 hours or so, right? And the thing is, that took a lot longer than normal because of that winter weather. You know, the trees had fallen and they had to cut them, and people drove under the power lines and they were scraping on the roof of the car. And I was paler than your probably white sheets, right, when I got there. And I was having a real problem. A lot of places didn't want to. She took me to a place called an urgent care, right? My first one I ever saw. And they looked at me, and I told them a little bit of what happened, and they said, "Oh, we got to give you some antibiotic." I think a little needle in the shoulder, no big deal, right? And honest to God, I don't know if any of you've seen those big pill bottles, right? They got these big needles that are like that for cows and stuff. And they came in, the nurse comes in with one of those, and I looked at her and said, "You're kidding me, right? Like, can you put a little in each arm?" And went, "No, it's going to go in your butt cheek." And I looked at her and I thought she was crazy, right? But I was feeling bad. I had the sweat coming down me. I was bad, right? So, and I said, "No, not all at once." She said, "No." But she wanted me to bend over. And I had these fresh scars, and we're talking pain galore, right? And they're infected. I found out they gave me contaminated blood with a bunch of different things in it. Apparently, they gave a lot of people down there contaminated blood, but they didn't want to let them know in case they panic and think it was one of those Al Qaeda or ISIS things or whatever, the way they are. They didn't even want to ask their neighboring states for blood, but that's the way some of them are down there. Well, Janie just told me that's the way it was down there, right? Which is really sad. Another reason I don't want to live down there. If you don't treat the people right, hey, I don't want to be there, right? And anyway, she put it all in one cheek, which is I'm still trying to figure out how the hell it all got in there, right? I am. I've never seen anything like that in my entire life, right? The damn thing looked the size of a water bottle. And some of you might know the kind. I think they use them in veterinary medicine, right? And then they ripped up my file and said, "You were never here, right? And don't come back," right? Well, that didn't help, right? And I ended up getting Janie a doctor of all things, right? Because she didn't have one at the time, so I ended up calling around. And I got her a doctor. Well, while I was there, I saw the guy today, and it took a couple of months for me to get well, because like I was getting a different antibiotic every week. Right? This guy's really nice, right? I liked him, and then I finally came back up to Canada. But I went to like 4 different hospitals, like in different cities and stuff, all the way up to Toronto there, right? And they had done such a poor job of me and everything, and healed up so much that I was so bad they couldn't even put me out without risking me having a less than a 5% chance of waking up, right? I had an uneven heart rate because it wasn't flowing through my left leg, right? And all everybody wanted to do was cut my left leg off. I had an operation to put a stent in my left leg in order to keep, because I asked the guy, "Hey, it's going to take a little bit longer. If he does it this, would be a lot easier to cut it." Well, I wasn't looking for easy. Forget that. I had other words that, but I was thinking. I'm not going to say them. I think some of you already know that. I don't care what's easier for you. I care what's better for me. And if I can keep my leg, I keep it. 3 times they wanted to take my leg, right? The last time being in December 2015. They gave me some pills I was allergic to. My foot swelled up to over a size 20. And my left leg turned blue, of course, right? 100% blockage, and they want to cut it off. I prayed to God, you know, and he got me out of there, right? That's all I could say, and I got my leg right now, and it definitely is not blue, right? But anyway, back to the thing, right? I was having all kinds of heart attacks, right? A lot of them, right? And I'm allergic to aspirin and a few other things, right? And what heart meds are made of? Over 99% of them are made of the things I'm allergic to. So, these guys telling you that you got a week to live, March 9, 2006, and 3 of them shaking your hand, including the head cardiologist of the very hospital in the city I'm living in, right? Nothing we can do for you. No point even bothering coming in. And that's straight up breaking it down to me because I like to be honest, to the point. And I turned around and I told them off, said, "Hey, you guys are only quacks. You're only practicing medicine. When you figure out, give me a call, because only God decides when I live or die, right? Not you." And I walked out of there, and I walked a couple of miles home. I'd waited downstairs for about a half hour, a little over. But I called my wife, who gave the keys to some guy, and instead of coming to pick me up, went and got a girl and got drunk. So I got home, panting and gasping, grabbing my chest, and it took quite a while. One heart attack after another. And I was talking to God, saying, "Hey, I may not make it, but please help me make it there, so I don't lie in the streets here. If I'm going to drop dead, at least let me do it at home, right? So I just get a hug or something before I go, And you have some weird thoughts when you're in pain and stuff like that. Trust me, right? But you're talking to God, and He's listening. He listens all the time. Sometimes He doesn't respond. Sometimes what you're saying isn't worth a response. And sometimes if He says yes to some of the things you're asking for, bad things will happen down the road. You haven't, thought about problems down the road you haven't thought about, right? But he listened that time, and he made sure I got it there, and he kept me around, right? And so I ended up I drove this guy back, right? And I came back, I said, hey, this is what they said, inoperable, right? And but I still, I, I didn't realize it, and then the Lord showed me something and I'll talk about that in another video. But even sick as I was, see, I went out there for the Lord, and I laid hands on a couple of people that He put in my path. I was doing something else, and these people are just out of the blue, And I said, okay, go for it, because Jesus says you can do as I do, and I did, and every one of them got healed, right? I'm driving along, when they tell you got a week left to live, you're trying to apologize to whoever you can think of, like, hey, God, I'm sorry if I did this and that, and also they hear God in a loud voice while I'm driving, kind of like Paul did there when he was with people, and he said a name, and I figured, oh, did I do wrong by this person? I couldn't even remember, right? Because I had so many concussions. I had well over 30 of them. I think the exact count was 34, but I may have been off by one or two, but does it really matter when you're that high, right? You could ask me, did you eat yesterday, or what did you eat? And I wouldn't have remembered at all. I couldn't remember, honestly. I could talk to you, you tell me your name, 10 minutes later, I wouldn't remember your name, right? Unless I'd heard it several times, you know what I mean? From all those concussions. Yeah? And, uh, and he said, no, and then just go to this one place and tell that guy sitting there about your problems you've been having with your car. So I did, right? And this man, when he stood up, he had his name tag. It was the exact same name that God said to me in the car. And the guy goes, can we talk outside for a little bit? I'm going to break. And we talked outside for 4 hours, right? And then the man invited me to his church. It was me listening to him, though, right? It was interesting, right? So some of the problems he had. And he invited me to his church. Well, my wife and I were new to that city, right? And so I said, hey, that'd be great, because I thought she was looking for something. She's in the wheelchair, can't walk and all that. I'm terminally ill. What else is new, right? Hey, I've got a chance to go. And when I get there, it's gravel lots, I see this car that's parked the wrong way, so it's blocking a couple of handicapped parking things, right? And I can't roll her into that gravel and all that, not the way I was messed up. And I'm getting there, and it hadn't even started yet. But it makes that little ding ding sound when you open the door. And there were like 10 people there, right? So me and my wife made it 11. Okay? And I'm doing what the Lord wanted me to do, right? And this is the guy that, said his name and everything. So I figured, hey, maybe he wanted me to go to church or something, right? I didn't know. I mean, how many of you actually know, understand? We don't think to ask God some questions sometimes. But, hey, I'm trying, right? And this guy, and before I can say anything, he points at me and he points down at his feet like I'm a dog, okay? And I looked at him for a second, and I went to open my mouth again and say, hey, but, I was going to say I need help, right? Did the same damn thing again the second time. I looked at him, I said, well, check yourself, right? I didn't like that. I tell you, you can tell I got a little anger there, right? For that. I don't like being looked at like I'm a dog, right? He went to do it a third time, and I kept going. I say, I'm terminally ill. My wife is in a wheelchair, and I can't push her across the damn gravel parking lot because some idiot parked and blocked the handicapped parking. I didn't know it was the pastor guy, right? This guy had no heart of God. I know this now, right? I knew it back then a little bit. This something was right. He's one of them false shepherds you hear about. That guy was so filled with control issues and anger and negativity. And okay, the men and the women sat separately. That's no problem and all that stuff for me. It wasn't really. I don't care, right? I wanted to hear the word of God. I'm at the back, right? So nobody can see me except that guy's up there. And I didn't like what he was preaching. And the negative, you could hear the hostility in the guy's voice, right? So I'm doing my own thing and talking to Jesus and praying to him. And the Holy Spirit told me, touch the guy, that the Lord had told me the name, right? And so I did. And all of a sudden the Holy Spirit came on and the man started crying there quietly, right? Because he was having some issues. And it was a direction choice in his life. And one way was definitely not what God wanted, right? And the other way was. And he was having issues struggling with it, okay? And the Lord just moved in basically to let him know that the Lord was there for him basically, and he just used me to bump into him. That's all, right? Because the Lord can use anybody, right? Come to use me there. This is all after the heart problem. I got issues of all kinds of issues from this. But in my weakness, and that's the whole point of this thing, in my weakness is when God showed his strength, right? So the guy just finished up and he said, oh, what the hell are you doing? That guy is yelling at me, brothers and sisters, right? And it was just, oh, I know there weren't many people there, but the whole point is, I was looking for a church. I think that's what I needed. I didn't know any better, right? I was young, still young and stupid, right? Even after God, showed me one thing and everything, I was young and stupid, right? I needed to learn more. I didn't know that much back then, right? I admit it. Yeah. Like a flower and a plant grows, well, we got to grow a little bit. Sometimes we make a little mistakes and stumble a little bit here and there. But that's where the uplifting and the encouragement is supposed to be. Not people jumping on you and ripping you apart. Because the Bible speaks about not sowing derision and causing problems, but uplifting each other, which everybody seems to be forgetting. About they're always pointing the finger at everybody and forgetting to look in the mirror themselves, right? It's so easy to yell at and blame everybody else for things, but what are you doing to change it, right? Oh yeah, this so and so's bad, so and so's bad, so and so's bad. Okay, I'm tired of hearing who's bad. Tell me who's good, so I know where to look. They're telling people don't watch this, don't watch that, but they're not telling them what's good to watch. So what are they going to do? Stumble into another wrong thing from one wrong thing to another. I learned this recently, watching it. Well, over the last little bit, shall we say, right? But in the term of my life, recently, I guess is the right phrase, right? I don't know how some people want to phrase it. It doesn't really matter, right? Later on in my life, I learned it, if you like. But here's this man yelling at me. Now, I'd already laid hands on a couple of times for some people. I'll tell you that story about them because you got to hear those in a separate one. I don't want to cloud it with this one here, right? And, he said, if God's going to talk to anybody, it's going to be me, not some bum like you. He was yelling at me. How would you feel if some guy talked to you like that after the Holy Spirit told you to touch somebody and even gave you that man's name? And the only reason you were there is because the guy that God gave you his name invited you and you didn't know any better. You thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to go, right? But anyway, I told him off and I rebuked him, I guess is the correct phrase that people use it. I really told him off in front of those people. And I believe it was the Holy Spirit. It was just flowing, right? And I used words I didn't even know. I'll be honest with you. Because I don't speak Christianese like some of these people do. And they use the fancy words that a lot of people don't even know. Right? But they forget, a lot of people forget. The Pharisees knew all the words. But when Jesus was standing in front of them, they didn't even know him. Even when he did miracles in front of them, they didn't even know him. But yet they knew the words. And these days they've edited all the Bibles. A gentleman, okay, this is off topic, but a gentleman sent me a quote, okay, and it was from the NASB, and it totally said a different quote than the one in the King James Version. And it was, I think it was Psalms 112, right? And it was verse 5. And they tell two different stories at all. The beginning starts off, okay, similar. It's more modern, those expressions. But then the last part, it is totally different message, right? And so you can see people being confused now, right? But when the minister there that you're counting on, a lot of people count on the minister to shepherd them and do right by them. When he's at a heart like that, he's definitely one of those false ones. What an ego. If anybody's going to hear from God, it's going to be me. And when you're preaching with such hatred, no wonder he only had 10 people. I'm wondering why he had all 10. And as we're leaving, the guy said, we're going to go to our usual spot for coffee that they went to. Don't go with these people. They're of the devil and all this. It's like, and the guy didn't go with them, though. He ended up coming with me and my wife. And he spent another 4 or 5 hours just dumping all the stuff that was on him, right? He just needed to get off his shoulders and everything, right? And we were just there to listen, right? And give a few little words here and there, some encouragement and some advice. Anyway, he went from putting people into bondage of debt to getting people out of the bondage of debt. So I mean, it's like a 180 for Jesus, because just having somebody to talk to, he had a priest he couldn't talk to, right? He had no one he could talk to. And he was teetering on what to do because he was getting pressured to put people into bondage, to push more debt on people. So he ended up quitting that one and got another one where he's helping people get out of debt. I mean, God can change people's lives, right? And he did mine, right? And I'll tell you about the people that I laid hands on for Jesus, because they were healed, and they are really great stories. Because Jesus said, you can do as I do, He said to follow me. He didn't say to follow some religion or something because there was none at the time. He was starting it basically, I guess you want to call it, right? And, you know, think about it. What have we done with your bag of gold, right? I may not be the best, I may not be the fanciest speaker, but I know I'm loved by Jesus, just like you are. Many of you are loved by Jesus, you know. He moves in your lives quietly a lot of times. You don't see or notice. He's there watching you, making sure you're okay. Sometimes things happen, but they're there to build character. Some of them may be tests like Job had to varying degrees, right? Like, what do you do if, you know? They're not all black and white as some people think. And Jesus is all about faith in the personal relationship. And now I have an inner peace and calm that I can't even imagine how I lived without before. And I am the luckiest man in the world, I think, because Jesus gave me another chance. And he just didn't let me die. Or I wouldn't be here right now talking to you. So even after all that happened to me, right, I should have died how many times over? Every time I turned around, Jesus stepped in and just made sure I didn't. Okay? And some of you may not have had as many problems as I had, but they were of my own making. You know, because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I was supposed to be looking for Jesus. I didn't have anybody telling me about it. I grew up where bikers and problems, you name it, right? I watch bikers jousting, as they call it. You know, you're coming with a big socket wrench at me, and I'm coming with a big chain at you, heading towards each other, just like the jousts of the knights of old. I saw drug labs getting raided. I just opened the door, looked at the cross. I've seen all manner of stuff. So my upbringing things I've seen may be a little bit more graphic than some of the stuff you are, you know? But God touched me and he turned my life around. Some of you had similar lives. Some of you had worse lives. I mean, I'm not the only one, right? It's not too late in case you're a first-time listener and you don't think that anybody can help you. Jesus is there. It's finally when I talk to him, you know, even after I've seen some stuff and all that, that I guess I was holding back a little something. It's when I finally stopped holding that little bit back that it really started moving in my life even more, right? And I'm so glad I did it. The only thing is I wish I'd done it earlier, right? And probably most of that stuff could have been avoided because I wouldn't have been in those places in the first place for them to happen. If I'd been listening to Jesus and, you know, following him, I wouldn't have been there to have those problems happen, right? So I've learned from my mistakes, and I hope this helps some of you learn. And don't trust them quacks. My first choice is pray to the Lord, right? Pray to the Lord first. Because all those guys are drug dealers for big pharma, pushing meds on you that don't cure anything, just keep you addicted to treatment because if you don't take them, you die or whatever. When they can cure you, but they don't want to, and just a straight fact. They murdered over, I don't know if some of you remember, but they murdered over 200 of those natural health doctors. They're telling everybody, yes, you can get cured of anything by plants. You don't need the operations or those pills or any of that stuff. And they murdered them all, right? Their plans are different than God's. And if these doctors don't believe in Jesus, what are you even doing there, right? Because the best place for us to be is with Jesus, right? And we're all going to meet him sooner or later. I'm not saying stop your meds or anything, right? But pray on things, right? Because I only stopped when God told me to, right? Not when men told me to. And here I am without it. And I used to wear 5 pills worth of nitro patches a day just to stay alive. And I got the video on my page to show you my nitro patches. You take a look. That's only a 3-month supply, or 1 year and 3 months for anybody else. Have a great day and give God a call. Bye-bye.